IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Fighting G.O.A.T, where me, Somesh, Superhuman Kamra, and my close friend Arjun, the mystic Chipalkatti, break down the episodes of the week that was, speak about a lot of interesting stuff, and a whole lot of masti ahead with you guys. Arjun, the mystic Chipalkatti, is here with me. Arjun, don't be too happy. I know you're winning with all your predictions. Please wipe that smile off your face.
No. You'll get a chance to wipe that smile off my face for sure, because we've got lots and lots of fights to talk about, lots of predictions to make for the upcoming weeks. We've got big cards coming. This whole month of March, I must say, Somesh, is packed. But you know what? We are here, we're ready. We're going to bring it all to you with in-depth analysis and coverage, and all your chances to come and bet with us in our third segment, the MMA Face-Off. But Somesh, so good to be back. Third establishment of our show. Let's get this party started.
Well, I cannot wait for this. I mean, Arjun, it was last year that we spoke about having our own podcast and doing our own thing. But imagine, with the IVM podcast and the Fighting G.O.A.T, we're doing our third episode. Super excited. Let's get things rolling.
Absolutely. I love that sound. Every time we hear the Fighting G.O.A.T, and it just pumps me up, man. But guys, let's quickly get into our first segment of the day, which is the MMA week that was. Somesh, take it away.
That is awesome. I mean, what a week it was. I mean, very, very exciting, disappointing for a few, but the fight card was great. I mean, Leon Edwards versus Bilal Muhammad. We'll be talking about that. We'll be talking about Ryan Spann versus Misha Cherkanov. And the third fight that we would like to emphasize on is Dan Ige versus the replacement Gavin Tucker. This was all happening on UFC Vegas 21, if I'm not mistaken, happening
Absolutely.
at the Apex Center in Las Vegas, Nevada.
And apart from the UFC card that took place this weekend, we had India's own Muhammad Farhad, who was victorious at Brave 47. So a round of applause to him for sure. It's amazing. He did such a great job. And we were so proud of the way he did it. And before we get into the UFC card, I really want to talk about how Muhammad Farhad and Abdul Badakshi, who's an Afghani fighter who's coming up the ranks, they both came out with victorious KO wins. But Muhammad Farhad, oh man, by the way, this is one of our predictions, guys. Somesh and I predicted in round 2, Muhammad Farhad would knock out Ulomi, and he did it in spectacular fashion.
Well, Arjun, let's talk about that fight a little bit, because if you remember, I think in round 1, Muhammad Farhad got tagged a few times and it looked like he was in trouble. In fact, Ulomi's left was connecting very, very often, and I was like, I was kind of holding my head and seeing, oh my God, I hope this doesn't happen again. I hope I don't lose another bet. But more than the bet, I was really looking forward to Farhad making an impact, because he's making a comeback after quite some time in an organization that is filled with killers. And man, after he got tagged with that left, there was a duck, a slip, and what a right hand. It almost reminded me of how Cody Garbrandt knocked out his previous opponent.
Yeah. Very true. Very true. It's that same, it looked like it was, the only difference was Cody Garbrandt swung from the hip. He literally waited, paused, and he swung from the hip. And he got that monster of a right to smack him. Whereas Farhad was circling to his right beautifully, waited for that moment and countered beautifully. It was artistic to watch. And it's this beautiful, perfectly sound technical KOs that just make this sport worth it. It was gorgeous to see. It was incredible.
Well, for all the Indian fighters out there, I reiterate myself, you do not need to fly abroad for a training camp. You can get all your training right here in India and still perform like Mr. Muhammad Farhad. So Farhad, congratulations once again. It was an honor having you on our show, and I hope to see you back in India very soon, and we'll catch up for some dinner when you're here.
Dinner, food, whatever. No, in fact, we have to go to Farhad's house. So that's a different story. He has to call us home. Remember, he said that if he won, you are the most welcome. Please come and see me. So, abhi chalo. Farhad, aap jeet gaye, to hum aa rahe hain abhi. But apart from Farhad's fight, it was Abdul Badakshi, who I remember we talked about last time on the show about, this prospect from Afghanistan who's been fighting in India. He fought under the banner of the Super Fight League and then got picked up by Brave. And, everybody said, let's see how he does facing, a higher level of competition in that sense. And he did not disappoint. Man, that kid has got such great hands. He's got such great wrestling. And the way he dispatched of his opponent was something to watch. Guys, go check it out on Brave TV, Brave FC TV. If you get a chance, the replays are up. It was worth watching. So again, congratulations to Abdul Badakshi. And now, Somesh, let's quickly move on to what happened last Saturday night.
Oh man, in fact, the fighting card was filled with killers and it did not disappoint because, Arjun, when we have a fight card where only one fight goes to the decision and it's a split decision, it just shows how dynamic that card would be. But it's very, very rare to see a main card of an event start off with a no contest due to an illegal knee and end with a no contest due to an accidental eye poke. I don't think this has happened. I mean, I have never seen a situation where a main card starts and ends with a no contest. So, man, Eric Sanders versus Darren Stewart was going so well.
It was.
Eric Sanders was actually dominating him. It was pretty much a one-sided performance. And, we had this conversation on the Ultimate Guide to UFC on Sony where we spoke on how, the fighter obviously doesn't want to, have an illegal blow or an illegal punch or an eye poke or something of that sort. But, there could be a time where they want to actually knee the shoulder or,
That's true.
Maybe the
different part
collarbone
of the body, like to the ribs, to the gut, to
Absolutely.
even the thighs or the legs, because that still softens up an opponent from that position. And it was unfortunate though, Somesh. It was apart from, even when you're trying for that pinpoint shot, unless you are, say, guys like Silva, who I remember when Chael Sonnen was on the ground, the way he landed that shot to the solar plexus with that perfect, that pinpoint accuracy. A lot of guys can't do that. And I think even though he tried, but in this case, I think it was Eric Anders did it inadvertently. It happened by complete accident.
Right.
And a pity that it happened. But guys, because of the two fouls that have taken place in the opening card and the main event, our segment 2, which we will carry out, has a lot of focus on these. So don't go anywhere when we come back for segment 2. But let's quickly move on, Somesh, to what was the second fight. That I think that knockout of Dan Ige was something spectacular to watch.
Oh man, I mean, Dan Ige has come back in a way where honestly, in the featherweight division, people have to take notice of this guy. I mean, this guy is turning out to be a legitimate killer out there. I mean, what a performance. And Gavin Tucker, let me tell you, is no walk in the park. He's a tough dude. He's a tough dude. He was, in fact, I'm not too sure, but I think he was the betting favorite, even though he came in as a last-minute replacement. So he came in. I think so. I'm not 100% sure. But Dan Ige, man, what a performance. I mean, he showed why he's the boss of that featherweight division at the moment.
But Somesh, the fact that Gavin Tucker came in on short notice, and, I'm not making excuses for anybody, and neither am I in a position to make excuses, because the fact that they took the fight, these guys are warriors, they know what they're getting into. And the fact that they took it, but the way I think it happened was a lot of fans, if you watch that replay, it's firstly in the featherweight, the heavier the weight of the division is, the more chances for a knockout that you will see. The more power, these guys possess a lot more power as the weight goes higher. But at featherweight, to be able to do that with one shot, to flash KO you, where your lights are put out completely, is something spectacular. I suggest you really go back and watch that replay. It has been played, I think, already 10,000 times everywhere. And Danny Ige got a $50,000 bonus for his... And also remember, his wife is 36 months pregnant. And I think...
John Anik.
I'm channeling a bit of John Anik here.
Yeah, so, for all those who tune into UFC regularly would definitely know John Anik, someone who is a maternity specialist, someone who only talks about, so Robert Whittaker, the Reaper, has 4 children, the 5th one coming up.
Do you think he ignores people who don't have children? like, हाँ तेरे तो बच्चे ही नहीं, छोड़ बाद में बात करते हैं तेरे साथ, तेरे बच्चे आजा तू आजा, first तू line में. It's but I think it's become such a focal point for fighters to talk about their families, because like we spoke about on even our other shows and other platforms, Somesh especially has said that, that with, especially when it comes to like the champ Amanda Nunes, the fact that her having a kid has now changed her entire outlook about why she wants to fight. It happened with Donald Cerrone. He had a kid, he became a killer immediately.
Right.
It's I think it's just something that channels fighters in a different way.
Well, that actually gets me to the second point. I feel really bad for someone like a Megan Anderson. This was, her first fight post the birth of her daughter, and what a performance. She actually seems like a person who just wants to finish the fight in the first 30 seconds and go back home.
Yeah, man. I mean, I can't help it. It's firstly she took on the lioness, which is a tough task to begin with. But we will come back and cover this in more detail of how the entire mindset of fighters change. But moving forward quickly, Ryan Spann and Misha Cherkanov in the co-main event was another great fight to see, man. I mean, Cherkanov, a veteran who has taken on the who's who of that entire light heavyweight division, and then you have a guy called Ryan Spann who literally, this is another thing that is beautiful, where he's learned from his mistakes. He learned from his over-aggressive, he had an over-aggressive strategy in the previous fight against Johnny Walker, and the way he came back and made the changes, Somesh, was and you could see that after the fight. You could see the fruits of his labor. He broke down. He was in tears. He was so emotional. It was something to watch.
Well, Ryan Spann was on a very impressive fight streak before he lost versus Johnny Walker in his previous fight, the one which is before Misha Cherkanov, and I believe he really regretted that, and he went back to his camp Fortress MMA with Sword Saif, and he worked on his game plan. And Arjun, I actually feel it's more about working on your mindset, because when you're in that zone, and say that the opponent has fallen down, you need to be in a very calm mindset not to go in for the kill.
Exactly.
But in this case, what happened when Ryan Spann was facing Johnny Walker, he went in there, and that's exactly why, that is where he made his mistake, and he learned from that. And man, Misha Cherkanov, man, the Latvian Canadian who has not had a single easy fight in the UFC. I mean, he's, fought people like Ion Kutalaba, people like, Ozdemir Volkon. He's also fought Glover Teixeira, Pat Cummins, Johnny Walker. He's in fact fought all of them, guy with great experience out there. I predicted that it was Misha Cherkanov who would take this, but Ryan Spann showed why he's the rejuvenated boss of that 205 division, man. It just took him, it's round 1 minute and 11 seconds. How perfect can that be?
No, but Somesh, it's not just that. It's just like we talk about the mindset, is the way he walked in, the way he came in, the strategy that he employed. He hurt him with the first shot with that right hand, and then didn't waste time. He didn't, like we said, he didn't go to the ground, because a lot of fighters, a lot of veteran fighters especially, who are so well conditioned, will take that shot, fall back, and invite you to come into that guard so that they can buy time to recover.
Absolutely.
Whereas Ryan Spann didn't take the bait, made him stand up. And when you make a wobbly, hurt fighter get back to his feet, it takes a lot more energy to do that, to reset.
Absolutely.
And he followed up with that beautiful left hand to the temple, which dropped him. Hammer fist, and that's all she wrote.
It was game over. In fact, when you rightly spoke about the fact that when a fighter is hurt and he or she goes back on her back and invites the opponent in, I think someone like Jacare Souza was a master at that. Because even when he used to get hurt, he used to actually just fall back, go on his he used to actually go on his back, and he used to invite the fighter back and say that, listen, why don't you come on the ground? And he's a black belt in BJJ, and honestly, nobody wants to mess with this guy.
Same with Fabricio Verdum. He had the same shot. When he fought Fedor Emelianenko dropped him with a huge bomb. Right. And then Emelianenko made that mistake of jumping arm first into that guard. He looked for a leaping punch, and that's all Verdum needed to lock up that triangle. That's all he needed.
That's crazy. Because when Fedor did that to the Nogueira, Nogueira brothers, he had great success, but that was in Pride,
And also, Somesh, it was 12 years ago, man. 15,
Yeah.
sorry, more than 12 years ago.
More than that, yeah.
That world of a difference. That was Feather's prime, man. 2005, 2006. I mean,
Very
shit,
true.
there were very few people who could even touch him back then.
Very
and
true.
He was such a ace. But anyway, moving on now to our main event of the evening, the much-awaited return of Leon Edwards, taking on Mr. Belal Muhammad, who came in, the Birmingham native, came in looking so good. I think he had been inactive for over 600 days, waiting for that shot. He's been, we spoke about this at such length of it doesn't take, time is not a factor to see eliteness. When you see, it's like when even Sachin Tendulkar came back from injury, or even when great cricketers come back, or great footballers come back from injury, you see that elite level still there, That elite
Absolutely.
level is still there. And we saw that in that fight. Sadly, that fight went sour because of a brutal eye poke. But Somesh, I think that fight could have easily gone on 5 rounds and it would have been a treat for all of us.
Well, absolutely. In fact, this card was such a treat for everybody. Even though on paper it didn't seem like a very impressive card, it was so awesome. I mean, how many times do you see a main event where both the fighters come in with the same record, 18-3?
Yep. Very true.
And both are young fighters. Bilal Muhammad, the first Palestinian fighter that is signed on with the UFC, who currently stays in Chicago and trains with Anthony Pettis' team, Rufus Sport, with Duke Rufus. I mean, he was so waiting for this opportunity, and in fact, Bilal Muhammad, if the listeners do not know, is one of the few fighters who's ready throughout the year. He stepped in to a championship fight not even 3.5 weeks into his notice. So I was,
Yep.
I mean, when people
That was a big
would,
step up for him,
people
I
would not
always
even
feel-
step in. People would not even
Correct.
step in to face Leon Edwards. And
True.
this gentleman at 3.5 weeks notice stepped in for a 5-rounder.
Dude, but Somesh, the thing is here, now you can read this from both sides, because at the same time, it's a big risk for Leon Edwards as well. He was slated to fight a higher ranked opponent in Khamzat Chimaev, who pulled out
Right.
due to COVID complications for the second time.
The third time.
Sorry. And
Yeah.
he must have been so frustrated for him to be, because see, for Bilal Muhammad, it's a great opportunity. He's taking
Right.
on a number 3 fighter. If he upsets him, he's got his spot, basically. Whereas if Leon Edwards was to lose to Bilal Muhammad, then whatever standing that he's built and whatever position that he had staked out for himself over the last 2 years has now suddenly taken a drop. So it's a risky game that he played. Sadly, it ended the way it did. But I think we got to see some glimpses of the old Leon Edwards, and I can't wait to see him back again inside the octagon.
Man, but Arjun, 8-fight win streak.
I mean-
That's no joke. And this is in spite of being out of the game for almost 600 days.
Very true.
I mean, as you rightly said, class is something that you cannot buy. You either have it or you don't
Yeah.
have it. And this gentleman, after the long layoff, still came back and showed why he's so dangerous.
Looks so good. He looks so good, and we wish him, both these guys the best of luck, especially Bilal Muhammad. That eye was nasty, and that's exactly the kind of stuff that we're going to cover up. And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the MMA week that was. But stay tuned as we go into round 2, where we talk about stuff like inadvertent mistakes, the fouls, the pokes, and overall MMA judging. Plus, we want to introduce a new segment in round 2, which is the greatest rivalries of this sport. So don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another great week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you aren't following us on social media, please do. We're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Would like to thank our sponsors on the network this week. Siet, thank you so much for sticking with us. On the Paisa Vaisa podcast, Anupam was joined by Sujata Alawat, who spoke about women's credit behavior and about improving credit scores for better financial health. Gauri Devi Dayal was joined by Barkha Dutt on This Round Is On Me. She shared her thoughts on present-day media and journalism, and some of her experiences from the days of her reporting. On The Habit Coach, Ashton talked about how meditation is like getting engrossed and absorbed into an activity where you are free of other thoughts and focus on just one thing. On Agra Station Adulthood, Ritasha and Ayushi were joined by Supriya and Priyanka Joshi for an honest and heartfelt conversation about life as a woman in the 2020s. On the Filter Coffee podcast this week, Karthik invited Bala Srinivas, who has been an active mentor in the startup scene in India, and they discuss its various aspects from funding to government support. Our traveling professor Siddharth talks about this academic document called Statement of Purpose and helps us understand its concept and shares and some tips on how to draft it well. And with that, let me get you back to your show.
Welcome back to round 2 of the Fighting G.O.A.T. With me, Somesh Superhuman Kamra, and my buddy and partner in crime and brother and winner and whatever we can call him, Arjun Mystic Chipalkatti. Stop laughing.
The last two, you know what? It's not
Stop
my fault,
laughing
bro.
first. No, first you stop laughing.
I can't help it.
Stop laughing.
Right. You can't. No, don't be hurt, Somesh. We just started off. So what if I won the first 2 rounds of the MMA face-off? We've got our third segment is coming. We'll have another chance to do it, and then we'll meet again. But let's make the wagers, better and better. If I win the third establishment, then that punch to the arm changes to a punch to the face.
No, before the show, it was a liver shot, right? Is what he told me.
No. It's a liver shot now because I won 2. Now that one punch changes to a liver shot, and then if it's 3, it changes to the face.
God.
But
I'm in deep trouble here. I'm in deep trouble.
Speaking of deep trouble, dude, I think in the last 2-3 weeks that we've seen some questionable judging. We've seen some questionable decisions being taken. Now, look, for guys who don't know, for all the fans who are listening in, this is a tough sport to begin with. It's not. We don't have, like in cricket, football, anything else. You get instant replays that can help you out. Whereas in this sport, it's pretty instantaneous. A referee has to take a call immediately. And even judging, it's not like after the fight they sit and watch the fight again and then decide how the points went. It's pretty much round by round, which is submitted to the head judge. Though, but Somesh, this is something that is a very serious thing that we wanted to talk about.
Right.
Because in our last event, we saw 2 inadvertent fouls that were created. And then the week before, we saw another inadvertent foul that happened. And nobody really has spoken about it. This is becoming a trend now.
Well, see, the illegal knee is what we spoke about, and that was pretty much, how do we put it? No fighter really wants to give an illegal knee purposely unless and until you are Wanderlei Silva. But,
but hang on, in his defense, those knees were very legal in the organization he was in.
Right. But it so happens in the heat of the moment, once you want to lay a strike, sometimes you want to hit maybe the collarbone, maybe the shoulder, and it just grazes up and hits the face. And that's the nature of the sport. I'm sure that, be it Peter Yan or be it, Leon Edwards, they didn't want to do it purposely, but it's just the nature of the sport. Definitely we do need some changes. We do need some modifications. Maybe, the gloves, or I don't know what it's going to be, but there needs to be some changes so that we can avoid these illegal blows, at least when it comes to the eye pokes. The knee, you can't do much. Or
on the contrary, I think the knees, of course, I used to love the Pride's judging because the red card and the yellow card, if you committed a brutal foul, the red card would be put out there straight away. They would put the red card out, they will disqualify you, or they will dock points depending on the nature of the foul. Now, what Aljamain Sterling in the Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan fight was the difference between that and what happened 2 days ago was that the nature of the foul, even though it was the same, I think there were warnings involved because Peter Yan was told, like, you're hovering too close, don't do it, and then there was a lost in translation moment that made him do it. And in terms, I think with in the recent fight, I think it was just an inadvertent knee which came up, even though it was mostly blocked. It was still inadvertent. And I think it falls into the jurisdiction of the referee at that point. I think it does. Can you imagine now if Herb Dean was in the Peter Yan fight? Do you think he would have been more satisfied docking 2 points from Peter Yan? Because that might have actually leveled up the scores going into round 5.
Well, yes, but once you have an Oscar-winning performance like that, where you cannot get up, I think it would automatically lead to a disqualification. But just imagine being down, holding your thing for 5 minutes, and when the referee says, "Listen, it's off." Okay, fine, yeah, cool. Where's my belt? It almost seemed that way to me.
But I think we spoke about this earlier, where in the case when there is a foul of this nature that happens, And it's a tough decision for both parties. Because usually the fighters that are on the receiving end, sometimes they don't want to quit. Sometimes they want to fight on. And the doctors will guide the referee to do the right thing. But I think in those situations, especially if a fight has gone, okay, if it's happened in the midway of the first round, fine. It could be a no contest. But if it's in a title fight with title fight ramifications, where a belt can change hands and it can guide the entire outcome suddenly, I think one thing can be taken into consideration is just like in boxing, they score the fight by the amount of rounds that have already happened before.
Very true.
I think that's a good way of doing things, don't you think?
Very true. So I hope and I really plead the commissions to at least have a look at the situation, because if I'm not mistaken, Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson was one of the biggest supporters when he saw Aljamain Sterling in that position for about 12 to 13 seconds. He's like,
True.
It's actually Aljamain Sterling's fault to be in that position and not do anything for about 12, 13 seconds. And he's in a title fight. So he's the one who should actually be penalized and not Peter Yan. And in fact, Peter Yan sadly lost the belt, and he had a host of, he had a barrage of kind of tweets after that where he said, good to see the champ, absolutely fine, and, and partying and stuff like that. So,
No, but Somesh, tell me something. Now, you and I have been watching this forever. We've been watching fights forever. This is why organizations like Pride, this is how they had those rules in place to counter tactics used by wrestlers in this position. Because if Aljamain Sterling had tried that against Wanderlei Silva in 2005, he would have been kneed into tomorrow and then he'd be astral traveling. Because you can't use that loophole, like Demetrius Mighty Mouse said.
Right.
And because he could have stayed in that position forever eating, he had his head covered up, he would have
Right.
eaten a few shots, but eventually, the argument can be made saying, why didn't Peter Yan step back and make him stand up?
right.
That could have also been used. But yes, there is a big argument for the rules in this department to change. And in terms of eye pokes, I mean, firstly, if you remember, eye pokes have been going on for the longest time. Travis Brown, when he eye poked Verdum, his finger was literally into his socket.
Right.
When in the Stipe DC3 fight, where Daniel
Right.
Cormier got poked so badly,
Right.
and it was already the fifth round. He couldn't see very clearly, yet that warrior spirit, he continued to fight. And
Very true.
what happened to Bilal was so unfortunate. You could see, and there is he's tough. He's tough as nails. He's one of the toughest fighters that are out there. He was crying in pain, and you
Well-
could see his eye had swollen up
Well,
to the
in
size of a
fact-
golf ball.
Did Bilal say he wanted to continue the fight and the doctor
did.
called it off? Yeah.
Yes.
So, I mean, that is warrior spirit. That's a real deal out there, ladies and gentlemen.
Like, he couldn't even see out of his eye. In the post-fight medical report, the doctor was speculating between a scratched cornea or a detached retina. Do you understand
man,
how
that's-
painful that is? And to be able to bite down on your mouthpiece and say, "Chalo, I want to continue."
Man,
I
that's
mean,
crazy. That's crazy.
that
I
is-
would love to see a rematch. I would love to see a rematch.
But that's the thing now, with the nature of how these fights end and the rules that we are currently governed by, it doesn't look like that would happen. I mean, the fans would clamor for it, but I don't think it's not up to Leon or Bilal at the end of the day. It's, firstly, I
Right.
think Bilal is going to be suspended for 6 months at least because of that injury.
Right.
So, I mean, it all depends on what the commissions have to say. It all depends on what the UFC has to say. We have to see what Dana White says. A lot of factors in that mix. But yeah, I think Somesh and I can agree on one thing, that I think the rules have to be amended to a certain extent, especially in terms of these no contests and stuff. Maybe they can start judging it by the rules. Maybe it can do anything else. But okay, but now we are quickly segueing into another segment of our round number 2. Before we get into the rivalries aspect, Somesh, in the yesteryear of MMA, did we even see this kind of stuff ever?
No.
No, I mean that's a good and a bad thing. It's a good and a bad thing, because obviously the MMA is becoming more and more, they're getting more and more careful to avoid injuries. But at the same time,
I've in fact had a lot of arguments with people, when we got in this aspect of calling the third umpire for most decisions in cricket.
right.
And I am a firm believer sports needs to have an aspect of luck.
Sure.
All those Steve Buckner decisions versus India would have actually been overturned
Slow
if,
death.
if and ever we had that referral system. that goes on in cricket. If
Right.
that happens, I think a lot of things change when you get technology in sports. Yes, it's very good, it's very important. However, there needs to be that 5% aspect of luck that that is there in the picture. And that's the way I've always played sports, where there's an aspect of luck. But right now it's just so driven by technology and driven by perfection that it's slowly losing its flavor.
Maybe we should just keep it to that, the crease line camera for the third umpire's decision. That's
Right.
it. Like, that's it. But not every LBW and not every nick that flies behind and not every shot that is, it's like in so many fights, even in MMA, you see there are shots to the back of the head.
Right.
There are cage grabs. There are a lot of things. And a lot of these, this is where I see the difference between the younger referees and the older referees. The
Right.
older referees let it slide because it's kind of a veteran move. It's when Chad Mendes and Jose Aldo won, Chad Mendes had a lock around his waist. Aldo held the cage. Mendes let it go. Aldo turned around and kneed him into the face. And knocked him out. I mean,
A legal knee, basically.
a legal knee.
Yeah.
And the thing is that a lot of fans cried havoc, saying, no, he grabbed it. Come on. They all did back then. They all took the opportunities.
Absolutely.
They all did, man. I mean, we saw Khabib versus Conor. Khabib kneed him from the bottom to back of Khabib's head. Conor kneed Khabib to the back of his head. Conor had his toes wedged inside the cage so
Right.
that he couldn't be. These are veteran tactics, and I think they're okay, man. They're okay.
That's where the tadka in the dal is. If you just, if you have
That's where
plain
the
dal,
masala.
it's not fun if you just have plain dal, right?
Correct. I absolutely agree. Which takes us to one of the greatest rivalries, which certainly
The
was
real
not
tadka.
a plain dal. It was tadka with masala, with ghee, with aloo, with shakkar, with whatever you can imagine, whatever you want. It was between two of the greatest fighters that ever existed in terms of bringing the sport to where it is today. They were talking about the greatest rivalry between Tito Ortiz, the Huntington Beach bad boy, and Chuck, the Iceman Liddell.
Oh man, these guys go back, 2003, 2004, I believe.
Yeah, yep, yep.
And both these fighters, if I'm not mistaken, were managed by the current UFC president Dana White.
True.
Way back. And he was in fact their manager, and he used to get them fights here and there. And eventually when they both came in and squared off in the octagon, I think it was such a thriller. Arjun, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was the year 2006 or 7. The largest pay-per-view at that point of time was Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz in 2006 or 2007. I'm not very sure, but it had 1 million pay-per-views at that point of time.
For 2007, getting 1 million pay-per-views was, pay-per-view was a different concept
Very
because
true.
which didn't exist, and it meant people buying a certain event via their providers on their TVs, and
Right.
to have 1 million people doing that, not to mention a whole revenue model that was based on the gate, the amount of people coming to watch that event. I think that event was a packed stadium as well.
Right.
And it was such a highly awaited event because the bad blood between these guys was so genuine. It's like,
Right.
there's a lot of manufactured bad blood also nowadays.
Yes.
But the bad blood between these guys genuinely hated one another. They couldn't stand each other. There were jokes made about their families. There were jokes made about each other's wives. It went beyond insulting their coaches. Wives and children and families, and that entire rivalry lasted for a couple of years. It
Yes.
started when Tito Ortiz was the champ and Chuck Liddell kept making fun of him, saying, you're ducking me. And
Right.
when they actually squared off, Chuck Liddell proved it. He knocked him out in a round.
That's crazy. In fact, you're absolutely right, because I do remember that Chuck Liddell was accusing Tito Ortiz of using the friendship tag as to avoid the fight with him. And
Exactly.
he said that, listen, we may be friends outside, but once we are in there for business, then there's no friendship. There's no room for friendship. We are just two competitors. And these guys genuinely hated each other. And man, to be honest, I think they still don't like each other.
Dude, that's a funny thing. I ran into Chuck 2 years ago at that event in the Middle East, the boxing event. He was there
Right.
as one of the guests.
Right.
And I asked him, I said, are you friends with Tito Ortiz? He just walked away. I made Chuck Liddell walk away from me. And I was like, shit, what have I done? But it's those rivalries, which made the sport. Like, there were the clean rivalries as well, like Chuck and Randy Couture, which was clean. There was no, like, the worst thing that Randy Couture said against Chuck was that he wants to beat the dog shit out of it. That's it. That's the only thing. And then you saw Chuck Tito was huge. But then, when you move to the women's division in the newer times, when I mean newer, I'm talking about 2012, 2013, when Ronda Rousey and Misha Tate were opposing coaches on the Ultimate Fighter reality show, we really saw that rivalry come out. Like, really badly.
Oh, man. It was so bad. That was so... And, I feel Ronda Rousey was genuinely a mean person. When she was in her element, she genuinely was a mean person. And, why not? She was running through all her opponents. She was literally, like a freight train, just kind of barging into them, finishing them, not even shaking hands post the fight and just walking off. She was like what Tom Hardy was in Warrior.
True. Very true. It's, I have a special corner in my heart for the fighters, It's like Vanderlei never said thank you after his fight. Shogun never even looked at you after he knocked you out. Mark Coleman, probably went on a rage after his fights. Fedor Emelianenko never even looked at anybody in his eyes.
Right.
Even in the stare down, Fedor would just be looking elsewhere. And then he would come out there and murder you. And Ronda was one of those, who would slap your hand away saying, I'm not your friend, I'm trying to feed my family. And for the longest time, that rivalry was capped off. You remember the time in the Ultimate Fighter when they had these team challenges between the coaches?
Right.
And she would get so competitive. And you could see her face used to be red, steam coming out of her ears, literally. Those were some of the rivalries which made the sport what it is today. That women's division owes a debt of gratitude to fighters like Gina Carano, to Misha Tate, to Ronda Rousey, to Kat Zingano, all those girls who had such amazing rivalries.
In fact, that's such a wonderful point because I've been speaking to a few people about women's MMA, and if you just see the kind of women that fought in the UFC, which is primarily in the 2012 era, there was a Navy SEAL who actually transitioned into MMA. There was Ronda Rousey, who was an Olympic medalist that came into MMA. So these are the kind of people who have lived life and have come into MMA. Right now, the kind of people who are coming into MMA are those absolute purists, from the age of 12 who are training in the sport to eventually get into the UFC. They've not seen blood, they've not seen battle, they've not gone to wars, they have not done all of this. I mean, man, that range of women's MMA was an absolute pleasure to watch. I'm one of the fortunate fans to have actually been involved in the sport to actually watch it grow from there till what it is right now.
True. I would say even in today's era, I would say the last great rivalry between women was Amanda Nunes and Chris Cyborg. I mean, that was a great rivalry because they were both touted as knockout artists. Less rivalry as more of a respectful matchup, yes. But when we talk rivalries, there are some great rivalries and there are some really bad rivalries. Like Jones versus Cormier was a bad rivalry. It was some horrible bad blood there. But we'll cover the rest of these rivalries every week, one by one. We're going to cover these rivalries on our middle segment called the best of MMA rivalries. Not just MMA, but boxing as well. But guys, don't go anywhere. Stay tuned for round number 3 to figure out what happened in last week's MMA face-off and to place your bets on the upcoming fight cards of this week. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
Whether you're an established sports person or a budding one, or simply a sports enthusiast, join us, Tanvi and Shlok.
We are two passionate pro badminton players talking policy, mindset and everything sport.
So tune in to the Millennial Athlete every Monday.
Only on the IVM Podcast Network.
Trust us, it's gonna be lit.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to round 3 of the Fighting G.O.A.T, where me, Somesh, Superhuman Kamra, and my partner in crime, Arjun, the mystic Chipalkatti, break it down for you and speak about the week that was and the predictions for the coming week.
Okay, so guys, if you've not been watching, Team Chips is now 2-0 in this game. Because, we've got it rigged from the start. Team Kamra can make all the excuses that they want.
Boo.
The fans have said it.
Boo.
What boo? Don't be so...
Take it off. Take it off. Take it off.
The belt is on me as of now. You
Okay.
want this belt? I'm going to use the same line that Anderson Silva did. You're never going to... As long as I'm alive, you're not taking this belt off me.
Okay, you know what? The winner of this just takes his shirt off.
Done. Arey, I've been training, boss. Tole, shole and all that, you know. I've started... Did I tell you I joined the Mr. Brocha's gym?
Oh, really?
Last week now, I owe Mr. Kamra 2 punches that will be doled out as
God.
soon as we are in front of the camera on Instagram in front of all our fans.
That's going to be painful, yeah.
It's going to be, I guarantee it's going to be painful. But you get a chance in our round 3. Somesh, what's the best upcoming fight that's coming up this week?
Oh, well, in fact, the upcoming fight card is extremely exciting.
A lot of great prospects, but that
Right.
whole thing is capped off with Kevin Holland and Derek Brunson.
Right.
Like you rightfully called, Derek Brunson has now reached, he's a veteran who I would call a gatekeeper because he is the welcome fighter, the welcome veteran before you get to the upper echelon for all the younger guys. And Kevin Holland, though, is a rising star, don't you think?
Absolutely. In fact, Kevin Holland is one of those absolute knockout murderous mixed martial artists that was actually, give nightmares to most of the fighters out there. But honestly, Derek Brunson is no joke. He's a tough nut. He's honestly one of the best wrestlers that I've seen in the middleweight division. Kevin Holland versus Derek Brunson is going to be in the 185-pound division, which is the middleweight division. And the predictions are...
No, hang on. Let's make it a little interesting for our fans. Guys, okay, you must Google the 2 of them. Both these men possess knockout power. Both these men have great grappling. The differences lie in the reach and the height advantage for Kevin Holland. He's taller, he's lankier.
Right.
He's also, one more thing is that he's younger because Derek Brunson has been fighting for a long time now. And he's also been on the side of a couple of losses. He's been knocked out a few times. The current champion, Israel Adesanya, knocked him down 3 times in 1 round before he finished him.
Wow.
And there are a lot of stats. Whereas Kevin Holland has looked spectacular so far. He knocked out, his last opponent was Jacare Souza, who he knocked out from his back.
Man,
off his
that's
back. You
crazy.
know how hard that is to do? You're lying down, you're trying to get up, and he swung and he knocked him out.
Man, that's crazy. In fact, Kevin Holland is on a 5-fight win streak. So he's coming in obviously with great amount of confidence. And as Arjun rightly said, he had a very spectacular knockout versus Jacare Souza off his back.
That's what brings us now. Okay, prediction time. Team Chips versus Team Kamra. Here we go. What's it going to be, Mr. Kamra?
I am predicting Kevin Holland takes this one. I cannot predict how, but I think he's going to beat Derek Brunson.
Same. I think for once, I think we are both on the same page. Kevin Holland takes this. How it's going to happen, because we never measure how it's going to happen because it's MMA, it can happen in any way. But in my head, I would say, maybe I would call it maybe a round 2 or round 3 TKO. I think Kevin Holland would do it. But experts have also said that the deeper this fight goes, the worse it gets for Kevin Holland.
Very true. In fact, Derek Brunson is on a 3-fight win streak. He's fought some really tough guys, and so I mean, it's not going to be easy for Kevin Holland. However, Kevin Holland, I feel, has all the tools to get past Derek Brunson and take this home.
True. So we're in agreement, both Team Chips and Team Kamra, for podcast number 3, week number 3 of the MMA Face-Off are on the same page for the first time. So guys, come in, send us your support, send us all your love, and tag us. Both our handles, my handle on Instagram is Arjun_Chipalkatti. My Twitter is @MysticChipal. And Mr. Somesh Kamra, could you please share your ID details?
I am on Twitter, Somesh_Kamra. And on Instagram, it's Somesh.Kamra. As simple as that. But Arjun, do you know, when we are on the same page, when we predict fight, it's a very, very difficult situation because you know what the winning and losing prize is.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a good one for us because if we win, we get to punch Mr. Cyrus Brocha. And if we lose, what happens, Somesh?
He gets to punch us provided he can catch us.
But that being said, guys, thank you so much for tuning in to episode number 3 of The Fighting GOAT. We've had a great, great show. You can reach out to me, Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, at Arjun_Chipalkatti on Instagram. Twitter is @MysticChipal. And where can we find you, Somesh, once again?
We can locate me on Twitter, Somesh_Kamra, and on Instagram, Somesh.Kamra.
That's awesome. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are the Fighting GOAT, only on the IVM Podcast Network. For more interesting podcasts, check out ivmpodcast.com.
That is after you first check out the Fighting GOAT, then you can check out the rest of them.
Absolutely. With that being said, this is me, Arjun, aka Mystic Chips, signing out. And Mr. Kamra,
Take care. This is Somesh Superhuman Kamra signing out and looking forward on seeing you next week, same time, same place on the best podcast network in the country, ivmpodcast.com.
Namaskar, dear friends. My name is Ashish Vidyarthi. Life, as you know, is a journey. And you and I, travelers, how can we celebrate this travel? I have a podcast for you. Begin the journey. I share stories and moments from my life. Do tune in every Monday and Thursday to listen to my podcast on the IVM Podcast website, app, or wherever you get your podcast from. Cheers.
From uncensored and unfiltered chats with the who's who of the entertainment industry, I, Siddharth Kannan, bring your very heartcake chat show called Candid Kannan. Tune in every Friday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever you get your podcasts.